On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
And this is Mike Putchell.
Tonight's episode is entitled Very Silent Chairs. So Paul Subris of the Press-Gazette contacted the jury after the verdict, but only 2 people responded. The others were either not home or not answering their phones. And again, this is the pre-cell phone era. One juror, Morris Sims, said there was some involvement by everyone. And then Sharon Heck-Minovich stated, I know what we did in our hearts. None of us had any reservations. What does that statement say to you, that none of us had any reservations?
To me, it just sounds like they were confident in the decision that they came to. No uncertainty, no regrets.
Sims said he knew that they were guilty as soon as they started talking on the witness stand. And this was especially true of Keith Kutzka. And Sims said, again, a direct quote, I think they all knew who did it. So why do you think that the Monfils 6 came across sketchy on the witness stand?
I don't know. I was actually questioning that too. I said that, well, I'd like to hear some of that recording because I don't know how that could be. The only way I could see it is prosecutorial tongue twisting.
Yeah, that may perhaps Zukowski and his assistant were just so skilled as prosecutors that they were able to make it look like they were sketchy. I guess that's what they had to do, right? Because they didn't have any evidence.
Right, yeah, discredit the witness.
Minovich said statements on the stand by Kutzka and Moore did not match their earlier statements. She did not seem concerned that Winkler had tampered with Moore's earlier statement. Maybe she didn't even know that, though, right? That had been tampered with.
Well, it says here she should have known. It says that that's something that the defense attorney had exposed at trial. So she should have known. They all should have known that.
The jury also had doubts about the sincerity of Dale Bastian, who began crying on the stand. What did you think about that? So obviously, he did it because there were witnesses. I think Winkler stated at one point that Bastian cried in front of him.
Yeah, it seems like this jury just is... They're real tough people. Not sympathetic.
Yeah, indeed. Heck-Minovich said the jury made the decision not to look at the Monfils 6 while the verdicts were being read. What did you think about that they wouldn't look at the Monfils 6 while the verdicts were being read?
I don't know. I think that might be even kind of a common thing. I don't know if jurors want to see the reactions or make eye contact with people that they just decided to forever permanently alter their lives.
And then she said the jury went back to the deliberation room after it was over, and several jurors started to break down and cry. Now, if they were confident in their decisions, why do you think they would start to break down and cry?
Well, I think the main reason was from the quote. They were more sad for the families of everybody involved. They weren't necessarily sad for the defendants. It was more about the families that they were thinking of, and then certainly Monfils' family.
Heck, Minovich said that when they left court, they were shaken after a man yelled at them that they would all go to hell. What about that? The fact that that happened, do you think that maybe that caused them to have any doubt in their verdict?
No, I don't think that would change anything. They seem pretty convinced. They're firm on their decision.
So Subris, this is the Green Bay Press-Gazette reporter, was especially interested in Sims' take on the repressed memory of David Wiener, in which Wiener saw Bastian and Mike Johnson carrying something heavy like a ladder. Subris asked the question, and Sims' response was, which one was Wiener? So what does that tell you about basically how this jury conducted itself at the trial?
It's sad. I think that's very sad to read. It shows, to me at least, that they don't even know who the characters are. And it was their job to sort through all this, all the evidence that was presented to them. I think that's kind of a basic thing to know who that was, because he gave meaningful testimony. I don't know how valid it was, but it was meaningful to the prosecution that kind of helped uphold the whole case. So not knowing who that is troubling.
So after that interview, all of the jurors slipped back into their lives and were not heard from again until Mike Pye was released. So then we have reporter Andy Nielsen. He found 3 jurors this time willing to talk. One was Kathy Hoffman, who said all of those 6 men put themselves in that time and that moment. And Sims was available again. And he said, I think Pye did have a part in it. And 4-person Gwendolyn Berry said, this is a case that I've tried to put out of my mind. What one judge saw was as reasonable, another judge saw as unreasonable. That's our judicial system. We did what we thought was reasonable at the time. So what's your take on that 4-person Gwendolyn Berry and declaring that they were reasonable, even though several judges thought that they were not a reasonable jury?
I think that comment is actually one of the few comments that I can understand, as far as one judge saying it's reasonable and another saying unreasonable. I mean, a lot of it is a matter of opinion with these decisions. But again, like I said, I don't know when a verdict is read. We talked about this in the last episode, I think. I don't know if a judge can just overturn the decision right there if that judge doesn't agree with the verdict. So Judge Bayorjan, who was the judge at the trial, he may not have agreed. I don't know. But I don't think that he can put his input in there when the verdict's read right away. That's more of an appeals thing. But I do know what she means with how one judge can see things one way and another can see it in a different way. So I get that point.
Sims said it wasn't like half the jurors said guilty and the other half said not guilty. It was pretty clear cut. And Hoffman added, I highly believe Mike Pye got the rope and the weight around Monfils' neck. However, nowhere in the 28-day trial was there any witness or evidence presented that showed Mike Pye got the rope and weight. That point was only brought up in John Zukowski's summation about that theory at the end of the trial. Memento mori, remember you must die someday. However, your life can be remembered forever by contacting us at seasonsoflifememorials.com. We are here to teach you how to create a film about your life that can be seen at your future gravesite as well as within the obituary section of your very own newspaper. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com. Mike, can you talk a bit about the new podcast option we have?
Sure. So we've talked many times over these shows about all the different offerings that Seasons of Life provides. And now there's a new one, the podcast option, like you just said. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. This is probably definitely like nothing that we've seen before that funeral homes are offering, or just any other services are offering independently. We know that audio recording and podcasting is a really popular way of conveying communication these days, and so essentially what we would do is there's two methods that we could do this, or two times of doing it, you could say, regarding when somebody would pass away. Probably the most popular option would be the after somebody passes. Basically, what we do is we would get together virtually with members of the family, friends, whoever wanted to be involved, and kind of just have I guess, a virtual kind of roundtable discussion of the person who passed away. So we would just ask kind of some important questions that really get down to who the deceased was, what were the most important things in their life, what really mattered to them the most. And the family members and friends would just take some time to share some of their favorite stories and whatever they would like people to know about the person. And then, of course, this would be something that would be saved forever, that people could listen to anytime. We know that memories fade and details disappear. So having these stories recorded is something very meaningful that everybody in the family, everybody that was close to the person would really cherish and be able to listen to and look back and reminisce on those stories. And then the other option would be the potential to have the conversation, if somebody wanted to have kind of like the legacy video, but in audio form, where somebody wants to sit down and share the key points, key stories of their life. We would do that in a podcast recording format as well.
And we're back. So in regards to Mike Pye being released, a total of 5 federal judges graded the Monfils jury unreasonable and irrational and charged it with failing to do its duties. Perhaps that is why today the Monfils jury all sit in very silent chairs. So what did you think about that sort of image, the very silent chairs that the authors came up with?
You mean that the jurors are kind of AWOL?
Yeah, correct.
I think it's a good way of looking at it. I don't know if that's necessarily why they didn't talk, because, I mean, even right after the trial, they only got a couple people to talk to the reporters, and then 3 talked after Mike Pieskoski was released. So that's still a vast majority we've never heard from. And I think some of it could just be what we talked about last time, that they just don't want to talk about this. This probably, in their view, was not a enjoyable or something to look back on positively experience.
So the authors state, in contrast, thank you goes to the one juror who apologized to Mike Pye for having been part of his wrongful conviction. This juror said, it was just too hard to process and easier to convict all six. So why do you think the book does not mention the name of the juror? Why do you think that they did not name him?
I don't know. Do you have any idea?
I guess the only thing I could think of is that that person said he didn't want his name in the book, maybe.
Sure.
So the author's going to say that the jury should have acquitted them based on lack of physical evidence and that there was no crime scene. So that sounds reasonable to me. So David Wiener, who we'll be talking about a lot in the next few episodes, he worked closer to the tissue chest than any other employee at James River. And he was working nearly alone on November 21st, 1992. The authors of the book tried to contact Wiener without success. Finally, he made a quick phone call saying that he would not meet or discuss the case, but that he would, quote unquote, stand on his public record instead. What did you think about that statement, standing on his public record? What do you think that means?
I think just what he had said at the trial, perhaps, what he had said in the police interviews with the detectives. That's all I thought.
So the authors speculate, was Wiener afraid of having the light shine in his direction because he knew much more than what he had told police? So David Wiener killed his younger brother Tim 13 months after Monfils' death. Let's talk about that for a minute. What are the odds? What is the psychological makeup of someone who would kill his brother?
I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that. I'm not in the mindset of that. But I get a sense from the nature of this family and just from what we've also read and learned about David Wiener that he had an anger problem. They said that when he would go to the social gatherings with his brother, with his brother's friends, like playing cards and things like that, that he was known to get angry easily. Like if he lost a hand, he'd get mad at the game. And so that's known to be a problem with him, that he had an anger issue. And so to me, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but this killing is really just out of anger. I'm not justifying it at all. It's terrible. But this was kind of a knee-jerk rage situation that I think just happened because they got in an argument. It almost seemed like it was inevitable because it sounds like they argued a lot.
So 2 years after the death of his brother, Wiener, he would take the stand as the prosecutor's key witness. In the state's rebuttal, Assistant DA Lassie said, quote, there is no evidence that David Wiener was capable of a vile act. Lassie was working hard to remove Wiener as an alternate suspect in the Monfils case. But Lassie's words were a bold-faced lie. At the very moment Lassie was speaking to the jury, Wiener was in a prison cell for taking his brother's life. The jury had no idea that Wiener had taken a life before he gave his testimony. So, in regards to that, we've talked a couple times about the defense lawyers in this case. how is it that the defense lawyers were not aware that David Wiener had killed his brother? What are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, I think they did know. I think the point the writers are making there is that Lacey, or Lasse, whatever it is, um, had put in a motion that you cannot bring up his prior conviction or the fact that he is in jail. It would be viewed as prejudicial, I think, to the witness. So I'm sure the defense did know. They couldn't talk about it. They couldn't bring it up.
So the jury would never know that Wiener worked closer to the vet than anyone else, and he had a shaky account for his whereabouts that morning, and that the prosecution kept the murder of his brother Tim hidden from the jury. So those are all really key facts, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
The authors bring up an author named John Douglas, who pioneered the art of criminal profiling for the FBI and has written 2 books on the subject. Douglas lists several common profiles of a killer, and at least 6 of which match Wiener's public record. So Profile 1, first-time killers feel compelled to confide in a relative or a friend. And it was just a year after Monfils' death that the brothers had gotten into a heated argument. So I guess the authors are speculating here that David told Tim that he had killed Tom Monfils, correct?
Oh, that's interesting that you took it that way. No, that's not what I was thinking. I thought the reason they just brought that up was that he had just talked to his mom prior to killing, and then talked with some other family members that he was basically going to kill Tim. That's interesting. I didn't take it that way. I don't think Tim knew. Do you?
Well, let's talk about that right up ahead here. So David had refused Tim's request to help him park a car in a favorable spot near Lambeau Field before a Sunday Packers football game. After the game, Tim and his fiancée Charlene went home to change before going to dinner. Tim then called David, and a heated conversation ensued. Charlene heard Tim say, "Go ahead and call the cops." There then came a time in the conversation, Charlene said, when Tim told David he was going to narc on him. And so Charlene told the authors she heard those exact words. So that's where I come to the idea that David must have told Tim at some point that he was somewhat involved with Tom Monfils' death.
What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because first of all, I caught myself after I was making those comments. I guess then that would have to mean that if you believe that this profile one, that first time killers confide in a relative, that would then mean that David either was involved with killing Tom or killed him. And I don't believe that. So I'm not going to go into all that right now because that's kind of leading into the whole final theory of what we think happened. But I don't think David is involved with killing Tom or has anything to do with it. So I guess that's kind of why I didn't think that way, because I'm not even entertaining the idea that he did it.
So a frustrated Tim Wiener decided to drive across town and have a face-to-face conversation with David. Again, we're in an era that was before cell phones, so it's important to understand how this could have happened. So David sat in front of his door with 2 loaded guns. His wife and his son were in the basement. I would imagine that he told them to get into the basement because he probably knew what he was about to do, right?
I don't know, maybe.
When Tim came near the door, David pumped 4 shots into him, even though Tim was unarmed. And David claimed that it was self-defense as Tim had broken into his house. What are your thoughts on the whole breaking into the house and then killing the person who obviously, do you think he was aware that Tim was driving across town to have this face-to-face conversation with him, or do you think he really just thought some stranger was breaking into his house?
Yeah, I was trying to just read back real quick if they had said, if he had said that he's coming over. I don't think he did. But anyway, it must have got heated enough to the point where David figured he's coming over. Like, this isn't done. And I'll get back to this in a moment. I just want to add the humor element here, how like this is such a Wisconsin story, because this all started because of an argument over where they're going to park for the Packers game.
Yeah. Although, when you go to those big sporting events like, Packers games and things like that, when you have to leave at the end, and it can be difficult to get out.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I want to shoot somebody. No, but but seriously now, let's see here. I think the whole scene with the breaking and entering, I'm getting a real vibe here that they had a close friend, a close relationship, love hate, as they say in the book, and I'm getting a sense that Tim probably just walked through the door. It was likely unlocked. I'm getting a vibe that he probably came over a lot and the door is just unlocked. That's how a lot of people are. They just have their front door unlocked and family members just walk in. And so I think Tim was probably, this was a complete ambush. I don't think Tim was expecting any type of physical confrontation, let alone a deadly weapon. So I have a feeling that this was probably a complete blindside attack, and I don't think Tim would have ever thought that it would have come to this. Otherwise, I think he would have brought a weapon if he really thought this is going to go like this.
Yeah, Tim was unarmed. So instead of being charged with first-degree homicide, John Zukowski's top witness in the Monfils trial was only charged with reckless homicide. Now, why do you think that Zukowski went easy on Wiener?
Well, I'm sure the cooperation is the main reason. I mean, this is a sweet deal that they came up for him. It's a bit disturbing how they covered up the fact that he was in jail. They didn't have him in the jumpsuit. Obviously, that would give it all away. Had him in regular citizen plain clothes, and they were able to successfully cover up the fact that he was a felon from the jury. So this is smooth work that they do. You have to give credit a little bit there to Zukowski and his group. They know how to work the law.
So the morning after his arrest, he was released on a simple signature bond. And like as Mike was saying, the next day the Green Bay Press-Gazette ran a photo of Wiener in the courtroom, not in an orange jumpsuit typical of inmates, but instead wearing his civilian clothes. So again, going back to this John Douglas profile. So profile 2, first-time killers often inject themselves into the police investigation in an effort to see if they are suspects and to steer the prosecution away from them and to ascertain where the investigation is headed. And then profile 3, and this one really stuck with me. First-time killers often exhibit emotional problems and take a leave of absence from work. A few weeks after Monfils' death, Wiener took an extended 4-month leave of absence from work to deal with mental and emotional problems brought on by what he termed work-related stress. So what do you think about Wiener taking off 4 months off of work? Why would you possibly do that?
I don't know, but I think it's something definitely worth looking into. We can't assume that it was related to Tom. I mean, it could be a possibility that, the mill was offering these leaves of absences. They were aware that people were affected by a workplace death. I mean, for all we know, he just took advantage of that and said, yeah, I'm having problems. I'm going to take a 4-month vacation. I don't know.
New episodes of the Monfils 6 podcast drop every other Friday. Please join us again. Thanks for listening.
Have you recently lost a loved one and want to hold on to their memory forever? We create individual and unique video-based obituaries that will allow anyone reading your local newspaper or visiting the gravesite to view the video and your memories of the loved one. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com.